Welcome to another special video for Images and Words Week, celebrating the 30th anniversary of Images and Words by Dream Theater. I am joined today by a friend of mine, Peter Aurelian, and we're going to do a fun little video. We're going to rank the Images and Words songs, at least our rankings. Hey, Peter, how's it going?
Good, man. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah. So before we get into this, you guys should all go check out Peter's channel and his podcast. Breaking Absolutes, is that what it's called?
That's the name.
He does awesome interviews with all sorts of metal and rock giants. He's interviewed all the guys from Dream Theater, Russell Allen, Michael Romeo, Mark Tremonti, Matt Heafy, all kinds of people, Nightwish people. Anyway, yeah. He does a really good job of asking good in-depth questions and having quite long interviews in some cases. So.
Yeah, sometimes too long.
No, it's great. He has a 7-hour interview with Russell Allen. It's awesome. But Peter and I have worked together on a couple of things, and he's very familiar with Dream Theater. So I guess before we get into this, what is your history with Dream Theater in general, and then specifically this album?
So Dream Theater, I joined a band in Salt Lake City where I was born. I was looking for any band. I just wanted to be in rock and roll. I kind of found myself, and I heard this record. The guys in the band were already listening to them, and this record came out. And I remember as a fledgling vocalist, it was both thrilling and demoralizing because I desperately wanted to, be at the heights of, what voice could do. And hearing this, it was like I should cease to try. Yeah. So then I fell in love with the band. I was fortunate over the years. I ended up moving to Seattle to meet the guys. Sometimes because I was doing music marketing for Xbox, I got to feature the band in different promotions. So I was fortunate to get backstage passes and this and that. And I have developed some close friendships with some of the guys. So when we get to the ranking, there's some context on some of my choices that are for personal reasons that aren't going to make sense.
Yeah.
But I'll explain them when we get there. But that's my backstory with the band.
Okay. And also, Peter has some other special things with Dream Theater. He did the novelization of The Astonishing back in 2000. What was that? When did you actually put the book out? Was that 2017? After?
It was after. Yeah, John desperately wanted. He had a vision from the beginning that initiative that there would be the game, which did come out, that there would be a Broadway stage production.
Oh, okay.
There would be a film, obviously the tour, the album, book, etc. And so I had spoken with John a few years before, because obviously they do such narrative music, and I said, you should let me write a book sometime to one of your albums. And he said, yeah, let's think about that. And then a few years later, when they announced The Astonishing, I immediately sent him an email and said, now's the time.
Yeah.
So that's how that. Yeah, and he'd wanted to have the book come out before the record, so people that were interested had the full story before they walked in to see the show. But it just, the timing didn't work.
Yeah. Because it takes time to write that. I'm sure they wanted to release the album in a somewhat of a, on time sort of thing. But
yeah, they did a lot of pre-planning. But I think they just didn't realize maybe some of the long lead time on things like book production and writing. So
yeah. That's just how it goes. So Images and Words was your first Dream Theater album then?
I had listened to some of When Dream and Day Unite, and I liked it. But something for me, and I attribute a lot of this. There's some maturity in the songwriting for sure, but I attribute a lot of it to James.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have that same story. There was step change for me in their music when he joined.
It's a big It's a big step up. I mean, it's a step up in the vocalist, but it's this big step up in production too. Because I think there's actually quite a few good songs on When Dream and Day Unite. There's a lot that I really like. And when they've re-recorded them for other things, I've been like, yeah, it's a great song. But a first album, a band has limited resources. So when they got to Images and Words, it seems like the budget was a lot better. But
I think they'd also, we talk about it all the time, is chemistry. I think as songwriters, I think that matured. And it was just this perfect storm in my mind of that first next level, that next gear as songwriters, bringing in a world-class. I mean, I have to say one quick thing about Dominici is I saw on one of the special engagements not that long ago, maybe 5-10 years now, but he came out and sang. He sounded better to me then than he did even back in his time with the band. So I'm not trying to throw shade on him at all. I think he's really, really good vocalist. I just think James is special.
Yeah, he's a good vocalist. He just wasn't the right fit for Dream Theater. So obviously,
Which by the way, the one little sort of thing I'll say while it's in my head is there are these endless debates about, if we could replace the singer, and I think that that's a sort of a false dichotomy, because I don't think Dream Theater is Dream Theater without James.
Yeah.
He's he's kind of a friend, so I'm a fierce defender of his, but I think sonically it's a mismatch if you try and put another vocalist in front of that band. So
yeah. Well, as far as this album goes, you're not going to hear anything negative about LaBrie from me, especially in these early days. We could debate 2022 maybe some other time, but so I guess we'll just jump right into it. So why don't you kick us off with your ranking of Images and Words, number 8. We're going to go from 8 up to 1.
So my caveat is this was very much like my babies. And this will be controversial, but number 8 for me is Learning to Live.
Oh, wow. Okay. Our lists are going to be very different.
Yeah, our lists are going to be different. And I love I went back and listened to the whole album again. Sort of in one contiguous listen in preparation for this conversation. And I love the track. And I'm loath to say anything that somehow denigrates it, because I hold it in too high regard.
Yeah.
But it just as a song, it's certainly in my mind the most progressive song on the record. And for that reason, I know why fans adore it. But as a tune, especially when in the context of the rest of the album, it's the one I listen to last.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you're listening through the album, it would be the one you listen to last. That would be best.
Yeah.
No, totally. And I'll say the same thing as I rank these. Is these are all great songs. So even if it ends up at the bottom, it's still a good song. Like none of these songs on this album I dislike. So it's just you have to try to rank them at some point. So, my number 8's going to be Another Day. And once again, I have no problems with this song. Maybe my main problem with this song is the saxophone.
Oh, really?
It's like that Kenny G style saxophone playing, which isn't really this kind of sax that I enjoy. I enjoy more like the fusion, more kind of crazy jazz type saxophone. And obviously the playing's super great. And I saw someone do a guitar cover where they played the saxophone solo too. And that was to me, was oh, this sounds a lot better. But I'm a guitar player. So.
I don't know this. I feel like I've seen stuff in interviews about it, but it's a song that certainly seemed like it would be the most radio friendly on the record, but it didn't really take off at radio.
I think the deal was that wasn't this one they added on afterwards. They wanted to do a Change of Seasons on Images and Words originally at some point. And I think they wanted some more, the label wanted some more radio friendly songs. So I think that's how this one came on the album.
That might be the vestige of the interview that I seem to half remember.
Yeah. Someone in the comments will correct me, I'm sure.
The reason it's going to fall higher for me when we get there is because of the reason John wrote it. But I'll explain that when I get to my pick.
Yeah, that's another thing, is since you're a vocalist and you look at the lyrics a lot more than I will, so it's the lyrics to me are fine. I'll notice bad lyrics, but if the lyrics are good enough, to me, the music ends up being kind of more the focus. I will say, the highlight of this song is the vocals, though. The James on this song is ridiculous. There's some absolutely ridiculous notes on this song.
Yeah,
towards the end, and then the guitar solo is really good too. I really like the solo. It does have. This whole album has a little bit of the production wise, a little bit of that an 80s vibe.
Sure.
And like I feel like this song leads like super like way harder into like the 80s like power ballad thing.
It does. It does for sure. Almost, as though there must be one. But it's also seen through or composed in my mind through the Dream Theater lens. When I've listened to the record, while it's the one sort of balladesque tune, I never cast it in the same sort of lot with other power ballads. And again, that might have to do with the subject matter a little bit. But that whole section, sort of the middle where James just starts to build vocally, and he gets to those biggest notes. I'm not going to name names, but I've seen other vocalists do versions of this that sound great. Nobody has the resonance in their voice the way James does when he hits those. And that includes female singers. There's just something about how he achieves those notes, not just that he hits them. It gives me chills when he hits that part.
Oh yeah. That whole part into the solo, that's definitely my favorite part of the song.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So let's go on to number 7 for you.
7 is Take the Time.
Oh, geez. Our lists are way different. Okay.
I love that this is the first like metal sort of tune that I ever remember that I thought that's metal rap at the beginning. This sort of the syncopated vocal thing.
Yeah.
And the breakdown section, one of my favorite on the album. I don't know if I just heard it a lot, and it was one I know it was on the demo because I've got some of those bootlegs that have the early demos from these guys. But it's it's one of the most. The lyrics are cool, but they might be the most. I don't know, obvious or something. They don't seem quite as searching as some of the other tracks. And so they're easier for me not to listen to lyrically. And you and I differ this way, that like, if I can't understand the lyrics and enjoy the content, the instrumentation will lack something for me.
I think, well, I'll talk about this more when I get to this one, which will be a little bit of a while from now, but, yeah, so my number 7 is going to be, I'm trying to actually remember exactly. My 7 is going to be Pull Me Under, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I like Pull Me Under. It's fine. Obviously, this is like their biggest hit. I think for me, maybe my issue with the song is the Metallica influence is too on the nose in places. And this isn't maybe the only song they do that, but like some of those main riffs, like they're cool, but they feel very much like, the kind of low E string just kind of ripped straight from what you hear in like a Metallica record. Yeah. But that's only really kind of like the main riff. The rest of the song's good. The chorus is great. I mean, that's probably why this is their most popular song. It does miss some of the more progressive elements in places. There's some of that, but I think you get a lot more of that in other songs, and obviously that's kind of the stuff that I really enjoy. Nothing bad.
It doesn't surprise me that you rank it down here.
Yeah. It's nothing bad to say about it. It's just
no. I know this is all. It's kind of like shades of love.
Yeah.
But I understand why you've got it here. I'll when we get to where mine is, which is much higher.
Yeah.
I'll do my defense of my placement.
Once again, I'm not like slamming it, so you don't have to defend it necessarily. But all right, cool. Number 6.
My number 6 is Another Day.
Okay. All right. So it's fairly on the bottom side.
Yeah, it is. And I hate to do that because I don't mean to suggest that songs that are balladesque always fall lower for me. I'm not a metalhead where I eschew intimacy in the songwriting. And I did versions of this list, Morgan, silly as it is, just for a podcast that had this much higher because he wrote this for his father.
Yeah.
And he treats that again, of course, later in Take Away My Pain much more poignantly because his dad has passed at that point. But his dad had gotten cancer. And so originally when I heard this song before I knew the backstory, I thought it was sort of an anti-suicide song. It felt like giving someone strength in defense of like hard choices that they might be facing. But when I read it again with the context of his dad, it took another, life for me. And so I had it up and down in my list, but it is at 6 in my final here.
Okay.
So,
well, that does add something to it. I'll have to listen and read the lyrics through. I actually did listen through the album. I've listened to it a number of times because I'm doing other stuff on the channel, but I listened through it and read the lyrics one time as I listened to it, which I don't think I'd ever done before with this album. Because I by the time I got to Dream Theater in 2005, whenever I first listened to them, like it wasn't as common to get CDs with the booklet and like, read through the lyrics. At that point, I was already probably, I think I bought it on iTunes, so it wasn't the sort of same kind of a thing. I do miss that though. I remember when I was younger, I'd get the booklet and like read all the lyrics as the song went. And
man, it was a ceremony.
Yeah, you look at the artwork, you see all the credits,
Yeah, you read all that. I'm not, that guy Eddie Trunk.
Yeah,
like this encyclopedia for metal. I couldn't tell you all the names on all the liner notes I've ever read, but I always kind of feel it's like if I really love a movie, I watch all the credits. I can't tell you all the people, but I just feel like I kind of owe it to them to at least read their name. And that was, for me, I was part of the excitement of getting the packaging, which, by the way, I don't know if you've seen, but CD sales are up.
Yeah.
Vinyl's been up for a long time. And I think part of it is people want to have that sort of experience with the product. You don't get that digitally. So
I like the physical element of it, but then the actual like part of like putting the CD in your thing, like skipping around, like that's kind of a pain. Like just send me
that's such a first world problem.
I know. Just send me the booklet. Well, I don't know. I'm so used to now just being able to find any song at like the touch of a finger and getting it like as soon as it, midnight or whatever day it releases, it'll come on. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know from Dream Theater with the last album, there were people in another hemisphere who were getting the first, record at midnight, and then they're posting reviews. And
you're like, I haven't heard it yet.
It's a spoiler.
Yeah. All right, well, my number 6 is going to be Wait for Sleep.
Oh, interesting.
And this one's weird for me because I almost kind of view this as part of Learning to Live, mostly because they share like musical elements, in places. So I think if you were to combine those, this is going to end up much higher, which you'll see when we get to Learning to Live. But on its own, it's a great song. I really like the simplicity of it. And there's some really interesting rhythms happening. The melodies are great. But I just think there's other songs that are more interesting to me. I mean,
I can see how you'd land it there.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And actually, I have a real appreciation for Kevin Moore on these first couple of Dream Theater albums,
Yeah.
Obviously Rudis is ridiculous, but Kevin Moore wrote really good parts, and he performed them well. He's not like the insane virtuoso, but these are memorable keyboard parts.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I agree.
So, that's my number 6.
Okay, well, my number 5 is Wait for Sleep.
Oh, okay. Well, we're close.
So we were close. I had one version of this list where I had it second.
Oh, okay.
Because I kind of went through this mental exercise of, is a song only Dream Theater if everybody's playing, or should I think of it differently that way? And I thought, no, quintessentially, this is Dream Theater without all the rest of the guys. And I think more ties Petrucci for me in being the best lyricist in the band. I think he has a way of communicating kind of in a less abstract way than some of the other guys do with their lyrics. And I love the lyrics to this song. And I went through and was looking at some of the time, like he's bouncing between 5/4 and 6/8 in doing it. And so it's hard to count. And you're way better at counting stuff than I am.
Yeah.
So I had to look it up. But for that, the lyrical expression and how it resolves in the very last line, it's just so artful. And I miss him in the band for that reason. And for the reason that you just gave, which is I think he might not be as virtuoso as Rudess, but he had a way of writing a part that just sort of worked so well in the context of the rest of the tune. And that's a rare keyboard gift.
Yeah,
so
he's a good composer. That part you're talking about, that's the same part that happens. It pretty much happens rhythmically exactly the same in Learning to Live. It's 3 bars of 5/8 and then a bar of 2/4, and then all those 5/8 bars then become 6/8 bars the second time around, so it kind of like gets expanded. I won't go into one of my analysis things here, but it is a very cool rhythm, and it like the way it feels like it grows the second time it repeats. It's really cool.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite parts of Learning to Live too, is when that comes back. So my number 5 is going to be the controversial one for my list, which is Metropolis. And once again, this has nothing to do with this being a bad song, because obviously it's on a great album and I'm putting it, in the middle. But I need to spell that properly. There we go. I think my issue with this, I always start with the bad things, but my issue with this is it feels like there's a little bit of a lack of cohesive ideas through the whole thing. Like once you hit the instrumental section, pretty much, I don't think at that point there's almost anything from earlier that comes back at all, And I don't necessarily need songs to be like constantly bringing back ideas all the time. But it kind of, the instrumental section to me, while it's like the classic Dream Theater instrumental, it's maybe too noodly and all over the place in some spots.
Too noodly.
I know it's amazing for me to say that. But at the same time, I love the energy of this song, like just in general. Like it has so much like power and aggression to it through the entire thing. So any like issues, which aren't really issues that I have with it, are pretty much negated by the sort of vibe of the whole song. And obviously
that is a controversial.
Yeah, I think it is.
Pick.
Yeah, for sure.
That so far, that's your most controversial pick.
Because I think most people would probably put this at first place, probably. Yeah. Although I have seen a split with this song. Like I'm on some Dream Theater Facebook groups and stuff, and there was a sort of bracket like ranking that people did. They'd vote, one song against another until you got to the best song, and I think Metropolis won overall, but there was also a ton of people that put it super low. So it was almost like most people like put this at the very top, and then there's a decent amount of people that have it actually fairly down towards the bottom. So I think there's an interesting dynamic with the record, particularly with fans that have been fans for a long time, of the lens of nostalgia. Yep.
And I don't know, this sort of saturation with some songs that have been played so much. I think that's sometimes why you see Pull Me Under, like you had it further down. But I'll give my sort of defense of that higher on my list. But I think that it's impossible to do these kinds of rankings without these kinds of factors creeping in.
Oh yeah, for sure. And one thing I will say about this song is that it led the way for Metropolis 2 Part 2 at some point, which is probably my favorite Dream Theater album, or one, it's at the very top. So this is an incredibly important song. I think it is kind of like the classic example of a Dream Theater song. So I understand why it's as famous as it is and as popular as it is.
For sure.
I think if I was younger, if you had asked me this when I was, a huge, like a massive fanboy, when I was 20 or whatever, I probably would have put this as number 1. But
yeah, that's an interesting, makes me think of that father who took a picture of his daughter like every day of her life, and then they did the montage and show her grow. Like you could do that. You could do this ranking
every year and see.
And see how your tastes have changed over time. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, because the things that I wanted out of Dream Theater when I first started listening to them are very different than the things that I want now or that I enjoy now. So that's just the nature of growing up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I see in the community, and this isn't a negative comment about the community, but there are clearly fans who really are enamored of Dream Theater's metal side, and they can't get too much of it. And then there's other fans for whom this record is the pinnacle of everything they ever wrote, because it's, to them, they've described it as the most progressive.
Yeah.
So, it's all Dream Theater. But yeah, it's an interesting lens through. Your lens changes as you review the material.
Yep. And also, as I've gotten better as a musician and started to like be able to analyze stuff more, it's like in some ways that changes my opinion completely. In some cases, unfortunately, it lessens my opinion of certain things, but it can also increase my opinion of other things. So it's kind of.
That's a really good point, because one of the things I've been doing some vocalizing to some Dream Theater stems, And one of the things that I've known for a long time, but becomes much more evident to me as I'm actually vocalizing over them, is how effortlessly James delivered so much, especially early. And it's deceptive. Like some of the vocal work on this is he makes it sound deceptively easy, and it's not. And so now I have a deeper appreciation for what he's done vocally now than I even did when I first heard the record.
Yeah,
so I understand what you're talking about.
Metropolis is another great example of LaBrie's vocals too on this album. So
yeah.
All right, well, we're halfway there. What do you got for number 4?
Surrounded.
Okay.
I really, really like this tune. I had this higher in different permutations. As sort of stereotypical progressive abstract lyric writing goes, this one's probably my favorite. I mean, you can ground it in your own experience to decide what it means, but I love the hope expressed in the lyrics here, and I think that they did a good job with the music. I think they work backwards. I think the lyrics and stuff come later, so they had already sort of created the audio bed that had that sort of sonic signature for me. But when I listen to this song, I literally feel hopeful. So that's why I've had this even higher on my list. And I love the very lush frame on it at the beginning and end.
Yeah, it's got nice different sections to it as you go along. And that leads me right to my number 4, which is also Surrounded.
We agree on one.
So yeah. And I think I agree with everything you say there. I think this is like the most, I guess, uplifting song on the album, probably. I can remember how to spell Surrounded here.
That's how it just nailed it. When I do lyric writing to tunes I write, I usually am responding emotionally to the music, and that leads me to images and words. I mean, to make a really bad pun. And I have to feel like that's what happened here when who actually wrote the lyrics on this one? Is this John?
Oh, I believe so, yeah. I should know this because I just looked it all up.
I'm pretty sure it's John. I know it's not Portnoy, and I know it's
Portnoy
not
actually
LaBrie.
didn't write any lyrics on Images and Words, I don't think, which is interesting because he wrote a lot more as it went later on. But
yeah, it feels like a Petrucci lyric to me.
Yeah,
but I haven't looked it up.
I really like the two different sections of the song. It has two very kind of different feels. It's like the quieter, slower intro, and then you have that more upbeat part with the cool 9/4 rhythm, and then that really delayed guitar solo, which I've always really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Getting cool use of delay. There's some. My favorite part is the light to dark, dark to light, with like the going up and down with the melody. I really love that part.
Yeah.
And this to me, I guess, I don't know. I've always kind of thought of this as a ballad. Overall.
It's got ballad-esque parts.
Yeah,
for sure.
and so like if I was to compare this to Another Day, for instance, which is obviously at the bottom of my list, I think this does like the proggy ballad type thing much more effectively for me. So that's kind of why I have it up where it is.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, like as a prog ballad. The other one's much more traditionally ballad-esque.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, top 3.
Number 3 for me is Pull Me Under.
Okay.
The thing that I thought about when I was ranking it here is when I first heard it, it kind of just really sucked me in. Like I loved the heavy guitar. I loved the sort of epic mythic open. And then I loved when it started to get really crunchy. And I feel like there's been times when I've had it even higher than this, like just in the back of my head. And I decided for the purpose of this conversation, I wasn't going to pull it down just because it's so played. And so discussed. I tried to remember what it was like when I first heard this song, and I first heard James hitting those really big notes in the chorus, and hearing it, by the way, at least where I lived, on local radio. I was, so all of that, remembering all of that, sort of helped me pull it higher on my list to number 3.
Yeah. So I don't have the. I was 4 years old when this album came out, so it's not like I heard it on the radio or watched the music video. So I don't have any, feelings of it that way. I came to this album, I kind of went. Train of Thought was my first Dream Theater album, and then I went backwards from there and listened to everything else. So like I don't have any sort of those kind of associations with Pull Me Under. So I was able to kind of just listen to it as just as like any of the other songs, you know.
Yeah.
Not even thinking of it as being like a hit. And I don't want to be that person because I'm not. That's like I don't like this song because it's their most popular song, you know. It'd be like this is too popular, I hate it. Like that's definitely not how I feel. But
yeah.
My number 3 is Take the Time. And this to me is classic fun Dream Theater. That's always how I think of this song, is just like it's fun.
Yeah.
Like, really energetic, and the chorus is nice and catchy, and I love the instrumental section in the middle. There's like that bluesy riff. Like I love all that stuff. And the keyboard solo on this song, I will say, is I think probably my favorite Kevin Moore keyboard solo, towards the one that happens in the instrumental part.
Yeah.
The samples at the beginning and the rap thing is like for me, but I know that the guys were into, especially Portnoy was into that stuff back in the 90s. So it's the song. The chorus feels the most cliche is the wrong term, but it's like with all the backups and stuff, it's the most Desmond Childy. Yeah.
And so the chorus is actually like, I love all of the other stuff more than the chorus. But it's, you know, I some ways I hate even having a list because so I know we've said that a couple of times, but so I can see why you have it up there, but I probably let the fact that I've heard this so much bleed too much into how I thought about it. Because I can't tell you how many recordings I have that have this tune on it.
Yeah. I will say if this was the edited version they did for the music video, it'd be at the bottom because that's absolutely terrible. I don't know if you've heard that. But
I have, yeah.
I hate radio edits of like, especially of long prog songs. Like they just take away all the cool parts from the song.
They did that to Pull Me Under too. The radio edit on Pull Me Under takes out all that cool middle stuff that makes it proggy. You're exactly right.
I don't know if I've heard the radio edit of Pull Me Under. Was the music video for Pull Me Under was the whole song though?
No,
it wasn't. Okay.
No, the way I remember it is they did because it's a really long track.
Yeah,
I remember at the time. And I think even with the radio edit, it was still long for radio and MTV.
Yeah.
So I don't think it had all the cool, dreamy stuff in the center. I may be misremembering, but I remember being upset when I got the record that the radio wasn't playing the full version.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
There you go. That's commerce for you.
Yeah. All right, number 2.
Under a Glass Moon.
Okay.
I love this song for so many reasons. Vocally, it's so challenging. Like I've had, like you mentioned, I've had James on my show, and many of the vocal tracks, especially on this record, he just kind of starts in another place in terms of his note selection, and he makes it sound so easy to do that this song vocally is very challenging. And but he makes it sound like, you know, he's singing an octave down compared to a lot of other metal singers. So the vocal part by itself, but this is another one that kind of has this this hopefulness in it that undergirds a lot of the whole record for me. But you know, I just this is one that I will hit repeat on when I'm doing a linear listen. So that's why I gave it such a high ranking.
Well, we are in agreement on another one because that's my number 2 as well.
Oh, nice. Well, we know what your number 1 is.
Yeah. Well, you too then.
Yeah.
I would agree with everything you said about the song. I love this. To me, is the example of like an aggressive, heavier Dream Theater song on this album that works really well. Any of the problems that I had with Pull Me Under, which aren't really that many, are done better in I think on this song. And of course the guitar solo, which is just still, I mean, most people consider it probably to be Petrucci's best, but it's definitely up there for me. I don't know if it's my favorite Petrucci solo, but it's that one that you know, I learned when I was 18 and I'll never forget how to play that kind of a solo. So many cool things in there. And even just the riffing underneath the chorus is absolutely so hard to play. Like I just learned this recently. I think by the time this video is out, my cover will be out of this song too. But like even just playing that chorus part, it's so fast and there's so many different things happening. And like usually in a chorus, you just like power chord, and it's like it's awesome to have the kind of intricate parts happening everywhere. I really like that bridge part with the crazy rhythms. It all works super well for me. So.
Yeah, there's some work that goes on in the verses that is so frenetic underneath a very more a longer vocal turns of phrase. And so it's interesting. Like I usually listen to voice first, and I made an effort when I was listening to it for this conversation to listen more to the stuff underneath. There's a lot going on underneath this very sort of floaty line that James is singing over the top of it. And I think that's probably that's emblematic of a lot of how Dream Theater writes. But this particular song just brings that to bear in spades. So I say I'm a huge fan of this tune.
Yeah, and it's hard to do that stuff and still make it sound like a good song, because it's so easy if you're writing just like crazy riffing underneath of a chorus or something for it to actually sound like a good song and not just like here's as crazy as we can possibly go kind of a thing.
Yeah, and there's an instinct I think that you fight or can. I certainly do sometimes, to want to match all of that sort of movement with a vocal line. Like it's contagious. And so to find a way to weave something over the top of it that makes sense. This is I think maybe an example of what I was describing before as an evolution in the maturity of their writing.
Yeah.
But there's nothing bad to say about this song. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, and I think the writing in general is very good on this album, especially for being their second album. I do think there are some things songwriting-wise they improved as they went along.
Sure.
And that's kind of why like my favorite era, of course it's the era I first listened to, but the era of Dream Theater from like, Metropolis Part 2 through like Octavarium, that kind of like area tends to be my favorite, because I think they kind of found a really good balance of the technical stuff and the songwriting when they hit that point. That was my thing with Metropolis, which you're going to talk about here in a second. Obviously, it was like it just feels like maybe the songwriting wasn't like quite there in some places at that point. But
see, that's interesting because I feel the same way kind of about Learning to Live, where I feel like they do an artful job of weaving it together, but it definitely feels like different parts that they wove together. Versus I'm sure probably if we were talking to them, they'd be like, no, man, we very thoughtfully came to the next part as a consequence of what we had just written. Yeah. But just as a knee-jerk reaction, it's that's a little bit my experience with Learning to Live. I love it all, and I think that they have skill to sort of take parts and make them a whole. But for me, that I invert that with Metropolis, where it seems to me, and maybe this is just a bias, that going into each next part it's got some purpose as it grows. So I'll get to that in a second, because I know you're still on Under Glass Moon. But
no, that's pretty much all I got to say on Under Glass Moon.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're good.
Well, then, my number one is Metropolis. And I know this is such a cliche or obvious pick. And I tussled with it because I had versions that had other songs first. But I I tried to think it through as without any of the other context, which is impossible, but at least I tried. And what I kind of came to is it's quintessential Dream Theater for me, in that it's got some of that sort of that soft sort of mythic clean picking and setting this kind of tone and that they're going to explode at some point. It has James doing these vocal gymnastics where he starts in this very soft place, setting it. There's a narrative element, of course, to this. It's also very abstract. Like, they're personifying ideas like love and death, but they when they get in, when he starts building and building and finally gets to where he's kind of at this altitude vocally and maintaining it over a period of time. And then after all these vocal athletics, then he holds this note for like 9 seconds before they go into the crazy instrumental section. It's just like, it's kind of, for me, it's all the pistons are firing all the time on this tune. And the way they drop out of it to go back to like resetting for James to come back in and do this another ascent is just really masterful. Like in some ways, I think the songwriting on this song is presages some of the songwriting that comes later that you might argue is even more mature. So I did think about this pick. It's not just like, oh, well, of course, Metropolis, because everybody loves that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have this one at the top, and I love that it creates this narrative hook for what they did later with Scenes from a Memory, even though I don't think they knew at the time that was going to be a thing.
Well, yeah, I don't think they'd planned for that to be a thing. But when you label it part 1, then everyone wants a part 2, right?
Yeah.
That means everyone's going to want part 3 at some point, right?
That the risk, of course, is like, how do you top part 2?
Yeah, I don't think you can. Well, obviously, that means my number 1 is Learning to Live. And it's hard. Like, I don't want to... Like, it's easy for me to, like, just kind of like justify my Learning to Live pick by ragging on Metropolis, but I don't want to do that because that's not how I feel. Just because it's down at number 5 on an awesome album. So I think this, for me, this has like the full range of what Dream Theater is. And that's kind of why I love it so much. I feel like it has more of a dynamic range than pretty much any of the other songs on this album. It has very quiet moments. It has super loud moments. It's got some technical moments. One thing that I like about this is all the like sort of noodly stuff in the middle. It doesn't feel quite as over the top, and it feels a little more connected to the song as a whole to me. And I really love the callback, which I already talked about, the callback to Wait for Sleep, in the one section there. And then you have the big F sharp, the famous F sharp note, in the middle.
Yeah.
It kind of comes out of nowhere, but it's great. And they, try to find a live video of him singing it and to see how well he does it. Like,
Yeah.
I remember they did this song when the first time I saw him, which was on the Score tour, the end of the Octavarium tour, and they did this song, and he like at that tour he was really nailing everything on that tour, and I just remember that when that note came around, I was like, yeah, like he absolutely slayed it. But I don't know, just everything about this song works for me. I really love the chorus at the end when it comes back, which is kind of like a more straightforward, expanded version of the chorus from earlier. I love that kind of stuff. And then the outro with the harmonics on the guitar, just everything about this song works really well for me. Especially being a Prog guy.
I was just gonna say that I know a lot of Prog fans, not necessarily even big Dream Theater fans, but they just love progressive music. And I think I mentioned earlier, so they love this album in ways that they don't like as much of the rest of the Dream Theater, that they think it's too heavy.
Yeah.
And this is these particular friends who fall into this category, this is their favorite song. You're absolutely right. The soft parts in this are probably, other than maybe Wait for Sleep, are some of the most relaxed and the most open. The first time I heard it, and even still, it plays in my mind almost like a soundtrack. Like I can see the character walking through a cityscape when I listen to it.
Yeah.
And it does a really good job of achieving that goal. So I can't say anything. Everything you said about it is right. It just doesn't quite move me as much as the other ones do. So, I mean, what it really should be is, our ranking for me should be 1.1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I can see how this ends up, because I know a lot of your musical tastes, and I anticipated that this would be where we diverge.
Yeah. It's funny that well, I guess Metropolis and Learning to Live are like, I guess Metropolis is in the bottom for me, but they're like kind of split back and forth, which is interesting. It's funny for me because like I am more of a metal guy when it comes to Dream Theater, because the first album I got was Train of Thought, and that's still like one of my favorites. And I love that super heavy side of Dream Theater. So it is maybe kind of interesting that this is the song from this album that I like the most. But
you have some pretty...
I have very progressive taste. I think... but I think of heavy Dream Theater as kind of... That happens like really heavy Dream Theater happens later.
Yeah.
I guess it kind of
you're
starts
right.
with Awake, but like the really heavy Dream Theater starts with like 6 degrees of inner turbulence, at least in my mind. So
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
the real
No, you're right.
the 7th string starts to really take over, and it's funny. Like I don't know if I was to rank that would be a crazy video to do is rank every Dream Theater song. We can do an 8-hour
wow.
video. I don't
my
even know if I
gosh.
could do that.
Marathon. That would be so hard.
I could rank albums. Like that would be easier.
But that, if you limit yourself to studio albums, it's like 15.
Yeah.
You could include, but that's the task of ranking. I don't even know how many individual tracks they have.
160. It's between 150 and 200 probably. I don't know how you would do that, but
it would be. It's a fun thought exercise, but like at some point, I don't know how you start creating differentiation between 120 and a
especially
89.
if there's like a bunch. For me, there'd be like a bunch in the middle. I don't know how I'd even do that.
Yeah. How do you decide which one's above which?
It goes. I'm not sure on my top Dream Theater songs of all time, but "Learning to Live" is in the top 5, probably. Yeah, probably.
I would. That's a good question. I would say "Under a Glass Moon" and "Metropolis" might make my top 5.
Okay.
I haven't thought about that. See, I'm one of those guys. I love going back to the old stuff, but I listen more to the new stuff than I do the old stuff.
Yeah.
So I really, I don't know if it's not deliberate maybe, but I listen to the stuff that is most recent, and I just really kind of groove on that till I get the next thing. I'm just happy they're still writing new music.
Yeah, it is crazy. I've been going this long and still pumping out, high quality music.
Yeah.
And like I hadn't listened to this album straight through for a couple of years until, I was doing all this stuff for the anniversary, and it was a really good re-listen, to kind of go through it again. Because I have so much nostalgia attached to this early Dream Theater stuff that is,
Yeah, I'm the same way. Listening to it again, I knew I remembered it being awesome, but going through it, I reacquainted with myself with why I loved it so much.
Yeah.
But it's I've listened to this record so many times that it's hard to really rank them, because depending on we could do this again tomorrow and my ranking would be different.
Yeah, I could. There's a few of these that I could totally switch around. I think my ones on the outside would probably stay the same, but a lot of those ones in the middle could go up or down 1 or 2 spots very easily. So
yeah, there's a little bit of a mood thing that happens when you're going through. But it was fun. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for
inviting me to do it, because
I figured you'd be the perfect person for this, because you have you also have a great love for Dream Theater, but you also have very different kind of things that you like too. So
yeah,
I didn't want to have someone on who just had the exact same list as someone else.
Yeah, I like it. It'd be interesting to see if you did this with another progressive metal guitar player, if your lists are more similar versus someone who's a
maybe
vocalist or a.
I don't know if they would be. It kind of depends on the person, I guess.
Yeah, you bring your own. That's why I've got tunes on the Awake record that in the last few years of my life have just started to kick my butt because of so a lot of it's lyrical.
Yeah.
So I think man, Seasons of Life really plays a part in how you think about these tunes.
Yeah, my ranking would have been. I wish I would have made a ranking 10 years ago, and I could have compared, to now and see where it goes.
Yeah, Morgan then and Morgan now.
Yeah. I'm sure my rankings would change in the future too. So, well, thanks for coming on with me, Peter. This is super fun to do. So
yeah, appreciate
everyone. Everyone go check out Peter's channel. I'll link everything below for him, and then I think we might do something where I'll jump on his channel at some point too. So
we'll figure something out.
Everyone have a good day, and as always, stay proggy.